In fact, networks is relatively novel in economics because, in fact, network, you can think of it as the polar opposite of markets. And perhaps not everyone will agree with that, but I think you can argue that that is the case. So markets, as we typically conceive markets economists, is anonymous, okay? Are anonymous platforms of interaction, okay? So you proceeded to the market where prices were determined, and you reacted to these market conditions in a purely anonymous way. Certainly in modern societies, markets are important, but non-anonymous interaction is very important as well. Because, much of, say, research and development that is very important in the present society, present economies, is done through collaboration. And collaboration that is very much not anonymous, but personalized. So the perspective that networks brings to economic discipline is the perspective of non-anonymous, non-market interaction. And in modern economies, that is an important part of what is going on, and networks are provide the language to talk and study them. So basically, social systems are systems of agents in interaction, and then to that extent, how they interact, what is the architecture, what is the structure of their interaction should be very important to understand what happens in the end. So that's that I think is in a brief way why we're interested in networks, okay? Because it is the structure on which interaction takes place, and most interesting economic problems are problems about interaction. Okay? Firms that compete, workers that interact, for example, within a firm. So how does information flow within a firm? When you don't know a problem, who do you ask? When you have something to be done, from what persons you take orders? How does the information flow within a firm, for example? It's important to understand how this firm operates, whether this firm will do well, will be adaptable, will be dynamic, and what we say about a firm could be applied about any economic system, about the overall economic system, and can be said about any problem, to repeat: employment, technological diffusion, crime, etc., etc. The relationship is that social capital, for example. Social capital, there are many different concepts or interpretations of what social capital means, but one possible interpretation is the capital of a society, for example, has to do with how dense their interaction is. So, for example, a very celebrated work to which the term social capital refers to is the work of Robert Putnam, that talked about the high levels of social capital in Italy, in some regions of Italy. Well, this social capital had to do with how intense the connections between the individuals were, and this is important for many different reasons. One is because, as we were saying before, information diffuses to the network, and information, of course, is a very valuable good. But also because in economic systems there is an important consideration that is trust. So you have to you take your decisions under the risk that others might take advantage of that. Okay. A reason why they might not take opportunistic advantage of that is because you are all of you are part of a closely knit society where misbehaving with one individual might be punished by other individuals that know about it. Okay, so this is a property of the social network. And to the extent that the social network is dense, the deterrence for opportunistic behavior, for misbehavior, is very strong. No? So then, to the extent that that is very important in modern economic systems, social capital, that again is just a manifestation of the social network, will be important. No? Well, coming back to what we were saying at the beginning, networks is about interaction, okay? And interaction is important in economic systems. But it's also important in many other systems, no? In biological systems, for example, no? Where well, there is there would not be living beings. Well, it would not be agents, conscious agents, but there would be beings that or molecules or that would be interacting, no? And what other? There's, for example, other disciplines that are very interested about networks as well are physicists, no? Because well, there is a lot of work about interacting particles, okay? To try to understand how the interaction of particles at the microscopic level manifest themselves into some properties at the global level. So, for example, the understanding of how a material behaves in terms of magnetization is to be understood as how the particles interact and produce the overall properties of the material. Well, there are many sciences that are, well, basically all sciences are to some extent interested about interaction. So therefore, they will be using either implicitly or explicitly the language of networks. And then there will be many questions that will be common in all these manifestations, no? So to what extent the system can behave as a whole, or will behave in a fragmented manner? To what extent the system is robust to perturbation or is resilient? Well, so all these questions will be asked with different details, but in all these different disciplines. So it's natural that what one learns in one should carry over to the other to some extent. So that's one aspect of this interdisciplinarity, that they basically are asking similar questions, and therefore what one understands in one field could be carried to many others. But then also another source of the interdisciplinarity has to do that because of the questions are similar, and because the theoretical structure is similar, the tools that you want to use to study this should also be similar. Okay, so there is a convergence also in tools, in instruments, in mathematical concepts. So there's a convergence in questions and there's a convergence in tools. So that's why interdisciplinarity is very fruitful, and why these conferences like this one are becoming more and more common, no? Because they are very useful. Well, this conference is a good illustration of precisely this multidisciplinarity of the network field. There are sociologists, there are physicists, there are economists, and they are all speaking a similar language. They are not asking the same questions because their subject matter is different, but they are asking similar questions and using similar tools, and therefore we have a lot to learn about each other. And this is also because, to the extent that we are asking different questions, then the routes we follow are not going to be the same. So then, to the extent that they are not the same, there is some diversity, and then to the extent that we can talk to each other and make sense, this diversity is enriching. Okay, so it's not talking within our own profession that well, there is a point in which you exhaust, okay, novelty, but it's talking across disciplines, across professions, and there are new things to be gained by interaction. But of course, this is not always easy because well, we have different cultures, different traditions, and sometimes you have to make an effort, okay, to bridge the gap between the different. But if you do it, then it's very, very fruitful. I do theory, as I was saying, network theory. So I'm very interested, but I'm not doing work that has a direct application. Okay, I'm very interested, of course, in the direct applications, but I let others that are better equipped to do that. And I'm interested in models, abstract models that, are very stylized, but have some bearing on, would have some bearing later on in many of these particular specific applied problems. So, for example, one general theme on which I'm interested in different, with different versions, okay, is the coevolution or the simultaneous change of the network and what happens on the network. Okay, so the network itself and what happens on the network. So, for example, just to fix ideas a bit, think of, say, epidemics. Okay, this is not a very economic, strictly speaking, problem, but it's a good example to illustrate what I mean about the coevolution of the network and what happens in the network. So, epidemics about the spread of disease. Many diseases spread by local contact, by contagion. So then it's obviously important to know with whom you interact. So there are traditional epidemiology, that is a very old discipline, took the network on which the epidemics proceeded, given and typically very simple. So they were sort of basically everyone interacting, it was assumed that everyone was interacting with the same number of neighbors, and the structure was very regular, very simple. This is traditional epidemiology, so well, perhaps 50 years ago, even earlier. In recent times, with the advent of complex networks, the similar, what were the questions? I should come back. What were the questions asked by epidemiology? Well, the questions was, well, depending on the characteristics of the disease, well, to what extent the disease will become endemic, to what extent it will spread far into the population or will be contained. Okay, so these are the obvious questions that epidemiology would want to ask. So to repeat, traditional epidemiology asked them in a very simple network, and this network being fixed. In recent times, with the advent of complex networks, this question has been asked in the framework of complex networks. Okay? Why are we interested in complex networks? Because the networks in the real world are complex. Okay? They have a lot of heterogeneity, a lot of not easy regularities. Okay? So then, similar questions were asked, and it turned out that the properties of the network affected very much the answers, okay, whether the disease will spread or not, etc. But the network was kept fixed. But of course, in many processes of epidemics, the network does not remain fixed, but changes at the same time as the spread of the disease. No? So if you realize that there is an epidemic going on, you change your behavior, you change your interaction. You tend to, for example, to stop seeing friends that might be sick. Okay, or you change your pattern of connections. So then the question is, how does this simultaneous change of the network and the evolution of the epidemics interact to produce a result in the long run about what will happen in terms of the spread of the epidemics, etc. No? So the coevolution of the network and the behavior. If instead of talking about epidemics, we were talking about technological diffusion, we would ask the same question. So the diffusion of a certain technology would take place in the network, but what technological behavior others exhibit will affect your desires to interact with them or not. No? You might want to interact with people that choose a technology that is compatible with yours, and you might not want to interact with people that display a technology that is different from yours. So then there is an interplay against between the evolution of the network and what happens in the network, in this case technological diffusion. So this general theme I have studied in a variety of different contexts, and has absorbed a lot of my work in recent times.